Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and it's that time of the week where we get to take a look at the coolest new knives that have just hit our shelves, and it's the last new knives episode of the year. Thanks everyone for sticking around. We got a lot more coming in the upcoming year, but before we get to any of that stuff, let's check out these cool knives. All right, the first thing I want to talk about is actually a pretty old school brand, and that's Opinel. And we've carried Opinel for a long time here at the Knife Center. It's just one of those great classic brands. But we're expanding our relationship with them and really trying to grow the selection of the stuff we have here from this great brand. So I want to show you a few things. Well, everyone's real familiar with the look of their classic models. This is a slightly specialer version. But I wanted to show you a few things that you may not be as intimately familiar with. Some of their more modernized, shall we say, knives. This one is the number 9 DIY and still has that same kind of Opinel handle shape that you can see. Different blade, but it still maintains the good pricing of these. This comes in at 29 bucks right now. Now they call this one the DIY because it's kind of the Opinel work knife in a way. First things first, even before you look at the blade shape, you can see there we've got a screwdriver bit there in the handle, a small flathead here, and a Phillips head on the back. And let me close up the blade real quick to show you where those come in. You can actually pop that out of the handle without dropping the bit. And there in the end of the handle, you can see you've got the socket. Just takes a standard 1/4 inch bit right there, turns your knife into a screwdriver. So that's pretty cool. Then you just take it back out, pop it back in, and away you go. Now as for the blade itself, it does have their standard locking ring there, which can lock the blade into the open or the closed position, which is nice. This is a stainless blade. They use Sandvik's 12C27 on their stainlesses by and large, and this is no exception. Blade length is a little bit shorter than some of the number 9s because of the truncated shape. So we're at about 3.1 or 3.2 inches in length thereabouts. Nice high flat grind and a pair of they're kind of like sharpened choils here in a way at the back. There's a V-shaped and a more rounded shaped, and you can use these for some scraping tasks, wire stripping, that sort of thing. And then essentially you've got a chisel grind on this as opposed to the dual bevel flat that you usually get. But you still get something else that's very typical of Opinel's, a very, very thin edge. I mean, they come down almost right to zero with just a bit of a secondary. For those of you out there who love a thin edge and you haven't experienced an Opinel before, you might want to check it out. Very easy to sharpen, very laser-like cutting, and of course they're going to strop really easily if you decide you don't even want to use stones with it. You're going to be able to do pretty much everything you need to with a strop, especially if you have a little sandpaper. Really, really like that. All right, next up, it's some of their more outdoorsy oriented blades. Of course, a standard Opinel is great for taking on a hike, but they do make some that are geared specifically towards that. And this is the number 8 size outdoor knife. Comes in at 39, about 3 1/4 inch of blade, 12C27. Partial serrations here, and the serrations are actually, it's not a sharp point, it's a rounded point, so it's going to be easier to maintain that serrated edge as time progresses. I don't know if I mentioned, it is the 12C27 again, and you do have a blade cut out there that makes it a little bit easier to open one-handed. It's still not primarily intended to be a one-hand opening blade, but you can get it done with this particular cutout. Handles here are synthetic. You've got the orange color with the contrasting dark gray, but there are some other colors besides the orange. And then at the bottom there, you've got a survival whistle. Nod to the outdoor uses especially. And they rate this at 110 decibels too, so it's actually nice and loud too, not just a kind of a gimmick or throw on there. It's actually going to be a usable whistle. Next up, the number 7 Scout, coming in at 25, and the defining feature on this knife is the blunted tip. Now the edge still is sharp, way up there. It comes to, see if I can point to it, maybe with one of the other knives. The sharpened edge ends right about there on the tip of the belly. So it's going to be a little bit safer for those learning. Some folks like to give their kids a blunt tipped knife for just that safety reason. But again, it's an Opinel, so they keep things nice and thin. So as things progress, you could certainly sharpen that belly up without too much trouble because you're not having to remove a ton of metal. And you can always drop the spine right there on the tip of the knife as well to get yourself a nice fine tip once you get confident, or you're confident in the person who's learning in their abilities. Or you can just use it like this. It would make definitely a great skinner without the tip there, especially if you sharpen that belly, because you're not gonna have to worry about piercing so much. Blue handle here, other colors available, and again, the whistle in the end. Now for probably their most out there design, well, maybe, we'll see in a second. This is the number 12 Explorer coming in at $49. Again, 12C27 stainless, about 3 7/8 of an inch here, and a clip point shape, which is nice. Now there's definitely a lot of handle real estate. It still has that same great shape that Opinels are known for. That's very comfortable, just, upsized. But even if you have really large hands, this thing sticking out here at the back, which I'll tell you what that is here in a moment, is not gonna get in the way. You can see there, I've got slightly larger than average hands, and I've got a ton of space either side. Even if you've got really big hands, even if you're wearing gloves, definitely plenty to hold on to there. Now, as for the back of the handle, there's a few things going on. So why don't I unlock this and close it up? And again, you can lock these blades closed as well, thanks to that cutout there, so that's not gonna open inadvertently. Now back here at the end of the handle, again, you've got a whistle, but the biggest deal, or the bigger story here, is this metal piece. And when it's in this position, it's actually a removable piece actually. Right here, you've got a large lanyard hole. If I push this orange bit out and let that slide to this way, you've actually got a small hook-shaped blade right there, which you can use for cordage. Hunters could get some use out of that certainly as well. And then the other cool thing is, I'm gonna push this out again, and at just the right position right here, you've got a small ferro rod in there, which is really cool. And then you can actually remove this other metal piece. Let's say you don't want that piece at all, you don't have to use it. You can leave this ferro rod tucked in there, and the retention's not quite as good, but it's still got some decent retention, so it's gonna be pretty confident that it'll hold in there even without the metal bit. So you have a cleaner look. But no striker is included, and that's because the spine of the knife is actually crisp enough that it's gonna throw a spark. And the fact that it's a folder and you can lock it closed like this, you can do that, you can strike the sparks without having the blade open. That's gonna be a lot safer, especially if you're fighting frostbitten fingers or fingers are getting numb. Nice execution right there. But it's kind of a cool implementation. Obviously, they're not the only ones to have incorporated some survival stuff, including a fire starter into a knife, but I like the way they did it here. All right, just a couple more Opinels. This is the other kind of crazy one. This is the number 13. Still has that Viro block, and it's got almost a 9-inch blade of that 12C27. Let's lock it here, lock it in the open position. Maybe a bit of a novelty, but actually I think there are some fun uses to this. Maybe that some of the uses are kind of novelty inspired as well. But 99 bucks for this. I almost want to think of this as sort of a gardening or gardener's machete, or just a big garden knife. Because you could swing it a little bit. I wouldn't put it under like real heavy use. I wouldn't go batoning with it, certainly. But that could be kind of fun to swing around. But also I think, especially if you're grilling, barbecuing, or doing some smoking, you needed to cut up some meats out there, outdoors, that's fun. That's a lot of fun as a meat slicer for sure. Plus, if you are cooking outside, you've got kids running around, you can leave that blade closed up and locked and sitting on the table or side tray, whatever you're using. So if it does get bumped and go flying, you're not gonna have to worry about it so much. But that's just a lot of fun. That makes us smile for sure. All right, next up, I'll breeze through these last few. We've got a pocket slip from Opinel. It's kind of a faux leather. I actually hadn't seen these myself before, and they come in about 12 bucks. Now they say faux leather, it's kind of a felted feel to it, or almost like a felted wool type of feel. It feels nice and sturdy, feels kind of classy too, and definitely would look at home in a pair of blue jeans for sure. But you could use that, of course, for your Opinels. Maybe not much bigger than the number 8 size, but certainly a lot of other slip joints or classic pocket knives would fit in there quite well. And last but not least, we've got the number 8, which is probably the most classic size out there. This particular one is a special edition coming in at $45, or an upgraded edition anyway, 12C27 stainless with a black finish, black on the pivot ring, or the ring and the lock as well, and an oak wood handle. And it's just a really nice looking version of the classic Opinel. But again, back to those handles. If you've never held one of these before, they're fantastic. Completely round, no hot spots whatsoever. They're contoured, they fit in the hand quite well. Make a great gentleman's steak knife, that's for sure. But that's why a lot of folks love to take these into the outdoors, especially for stuff like wood carving and whittling. As far as folding knives go, this is very, very comfortable because, again, rounded over, no hot spots. You just gotta love them. But you can check out all of these as well as all the other cool Opinel stuff we've got on our site. If you've happened to look at our site before and you were maybe looking for something that wasn't there, chances are we got it now. So go check those out. Next up, nice classy, or another classy knife. This is the Finch Knife Company HOLLIDAY. That's Holiday with 2 L's as in Doc Holliday, who of course, famous Southern gentleman, gambler, gunman. Knife like this is just the thing. So I think it's very appropriately named, and these come in about $129 right now. Now there's 3 different versions. There's a bone inlaid version, it's very classic, a black G10 for a more modern type of foundation, or the snake wood that I've got right here, which I think looks really cool. That is on both sides as well. You can see we've got a bolstered style frame lock there, as well as a nice milled pocket clip here on the end. Nice classy looking as well. Now as far as the blade, pure Wharncliffe, very powerful cutting, excellent piercing capabilities. About 3 1/8 of an inch long, 154 cm steel, and it's really nicely finished. It's got a full flat grind and a horizontal grain pattern that follows the grain pattern in the metal bits of the handle as well. Has a very classy feel, almost a custom level touch right there in the way it goes all the way through like that. And that's really where this knife shines too. I think it's sort of, it's the quality, the feel that you're really getting here, that it feels more expensive than it is. It still flips quite nicely too, ball bearings in the pivot. Nice profile when closed up, graceful curve to the spine of the blade, just a little bit of flipper tab sticking out, and then it flips open quite well. Other thing to note is the small shield there. The inlay in the inlay, so to speak, is actually glow in the dark as well. Probably won't see that too much because it's not the necessarily the strongest type of glow there, but it's a nice little touch. But it looks just as good even when it's not glowing. Just a really cool, classy looking knife. So speaking of elegant everyday carry types of stuff, got something very interesting here. This is the Real Steel RealSlims, and these come in just under 50 bucks right now. 2 versions, as you can see. You've got a stainless steel, well, they're both stainless steel, but you've got the standard gray as well as a gold anodized version. Now they call this knife the RealSlim because it is real slim. Not counting the pocket clip, this is just 3/16 of an inch thick. So essentially, if you like bigger knives, if you like the Becker BK9, the blade on the Becker BK9 is the same thickness as this entire knife is. I mean, that is impressive how just real slim they managed to get this knife. But they did that so you can carry a lot of blade length with, not a huge bulking presence in the pocket, as well as lightweight. Taken together, this is just right at the 2 ounce mark. So very thin, or very lightweight, and it's still 3 3/8 of an inch of nice narrow blade profile here. Plenty of reach, plenty of agility, and very easy to carry. VG10 is the steel. You got that full flat grind. You got this real swooping profile to the spine of the blade. Not quite sure how I feel about that, but it's definitely gonna slice really well. And if they had gone with something a little slimmer and more like a more needle-like tip, you might have it might have gone too far in the direction of ultralight, ultra slim, because you would have definitely given up some rigidity and some tip strength. So it's probably a good thing they went with a shape like this. It is a frame lock, as you can see, folds right up, and I do like it here when it's closed. That profile of the spine really matches up with the handle shape, I should say. Red accents on this gold version, and then on the silver version, you've got blue. So 2 really nice different aesthetics to take a look at here. But man, if you're looking for the most capability to weight, this might be worth a look. Think of something like the Benchmade Bug Out, which is just under 2 inches, but doesn't quite have as much sharpened edge. And of course, it's quite a bit more expensive than the $50 price point you're gonna pay for this. A lot of capability for not a lot of money and not a lot of weight penalty at all. Now they are a little bit more tricky to open one-handed, I gotta say. Because that frame lock is there and it's a slim handle design, you do have to be careful about where you place your other fingers when trying to open it one-handed, but it is pretty easy to get used to. Just may require a little bit more attention to that than most out there. All right, next up we've got a really nice deal here in a new CIVIVI. This is the Pintail. It comes in at just over 83 bucks, which may seem high for a CIVIVI until you find out that the blade here is not just a D2 or a 9CR stainless that they're known for using on the lower end. This is an S35 VN blade for just over 80 bucks. Not bad at all. Blade length comes in right under that 3-inch mark, so it's something that you'll be able to take just about anywhere and take that capability wherever you need it. As far as the rest of the story, similar to the CIVIVI playbook, but you've got micarta here. It's a green canvas micarta as opposed to G10, but you've got a liner lock, you've got ball bearings in the pivot, and you've got a reversible deep carry pocket clip. It's got everything a modern pocket knife is quote unquote supposed to have. Great action, great materials, and a really, really good price. I like the blade shape here as well. Overall, the knife is just about the same size as the popular Elementum, but I like the shape of this blade a little bit better. It's definitely got a little more sex appeal going on. And the handle, even though it does have a prominent finger groove here at the front, it's still a fairly neutral shape, and a lot of different hands are going to be able to use this quite well. I hate to say it, the Elementum may be the most popular in CIVIVI's line, but I kind of like the Pintail a little bit better myself, especially with materials like these. Now the other thing this knife has that the Elementum doesn't is thumb studs. Could be a plus or minus depending on whose book you're reading, but if you like to deploy via thumb studs, you've got that option here, not just the flipper. You can also pop it open quite easily with those. So speaking of the popular CIVIVI playbook of the sort of the $50 D2 flipper, that brings us to the next knife, which is not a $50 D2 flipper. It's a $66 D2 flipper, but that's because the handles are upgraded. This is one of my favorite knives of 2020, the REVO Ness. Now everything about the shape of this is the same as the previous versions we've had on our site, but the handles here are upgraded to carbon fiber on both sides. And this is not the popular thing to do these days to keep costs down, especially in knives in this price range, is to go with a G10 with a carbon fiber layer laminated to the top. That's not what you have here. These are complete blocks of carbon fiber through and through. So you get some cool patterning going on the little areas that are milled out as well. You can see the layers of that carbon fiber weave as opposed to a more flat looking black G10. So that's really nice. Makes it a little bit more special. You've also got some red pivot or red back spacers there, barrel spacers, to give you a little bit of pop of color. That nice stone washed clip, of course, nice and deep carry. It's inset into the handles with flush screw head, so there's no resistance when you're going to repocket this knife. You're not going to get it snagged up. And then, of course, that beautiful Nessmuck blade shape. 3.6 inches D2 steel, as I mentioned. It's got my favorite type of finish on it as well, that being a stone-washed finish. And I like it for two reasons. One, it looks good, and I've always felt it especially looks good when paired with carbon fiber too, so it's a really nice look. It's also going to hide scratches as you use the knife, and this is a nice, a good user's knife, so I wouldn't hesitate to use it at all. Plus, with D2 being only semi-stainless, it's going to help a little bit with corrosion resistance as well versus something like a bead blasted or just a straight satin finish. Feels good in the hand. It's got a nice flow, ready for slicing very nicely. And then, of course, following that playbook, ball bearing pivot for great action. All right, I've got another new REVO here, which is very different in character from that Ness. This is the K9 Karambit coming in at $54. K9, kind of dog-like, maybe it's sort of your new man's best friend type of thing. But what you're getting here is some pretty decent stuff for that price point. Stainless steel handles, stone washed with that nice black stone wash texture that matches up with that aggressive blade shape there, which is a 9CR based stainless, so it's roughly 440C in terms of performance potential, 3 inches in length, and definitely an aggressive profile. Of course, you're going to be able to use it for typical Karambit type stuff, such as your tactical uses, but there's going to be some folks who like this as a utility knife too. That leading edge here, rather than being a sharp tip, as is typical of karambits, like this fox we'll get to in a little bit. It's almost like a recurved or a hawk-billed tanto shape. So that leading edge, you're gonna have a bit more strength in the tip. You're gonna be able to use it for push cuts, whether you're doing fine work here or you're trying to chisel with stuff a little bit. It is a curved edge, so it's not gonna be completely effective as a chisel, but you can get some of those push cuts done there. And of course, the recurve is gonna be great if you're breaking down cardboard. It's less likely to slip out of your cut, getting under pallet straps perhaps, or any type of fibrous cutting rope, that sort of thing on the pull stroke. But it is a frame lock, as you can see. You do have ball bearings in the pivot, but as you can see, this is a front flipper. It doesn't have the reverse flipper. And I'm okay with front flippers, and I'm okay with this one. But of course, you do have that thumb hole opening there, so you can open it with your thumb or do that middle finger flick. There we go, that's a little better. In addition to that, if you, with a little bit of practice, it's not the best at it, but you can use this leading hook as a sort of pocket deployer. Obviously, you'd want to have it on either side you need to use, and you can do that with the reversible pocket clip. But if you angle it forward as you draw from your pocket, you can kind of catch that edge and open it as you go. But it's a little fiddly, and it's not a positive catch, so keep that in mind. Now there is a gray version of this knife in addition to the black stonewash, and both of those maintain the nice anodized red backspacer that continues there into the ring. Nice little bit of color for sure. So I should have put the karambits together, so I'll jump ahead and grab this fox karambit. And there's a few different versions of this, this new fox karambit, which is a shape that's already been out there, but you can now get it with micarta handles. This is the 479 MISW in this particular case, coming in at about 117. The Fox's karambits, of course, are time proven in the industry, very well recognized to have a high degree of quality without really price gouging you at all. 3.2 inches of blade in this case, N690, stone washed finish, very aggressive profile. You've got a 2-position pocket clip, right side or left. The ring, I like the way they do it here, that all the edges are crowned over, nice and easy. There's no hot spots from that at all. And it holds really nicely in the hand, especially with a little bit of extra grip provided by that matte finished micarta. Now this one does have a full-on pocket deployer, and indeed this is a fully licensed version of the Emerson Wave, who kind of originated the technique of that pocket deployment. You can also open it with the thumb hole there, as well as with the flipper tab. It is going to require a little bit of force because these are actually Teflon washers in here. They're not ball bearings, but you're going to get a little bit more resistance to things like grit and dirt and grime and that sort of thing as you would over those bearings. But in all likelihood, you're going to be, waving it open anyway, don't you think? But anyway, there that is. A few different blade finishes available, all with the cool new micarta grips. All right, next up we've got a few new DPXs, some new versions of the Heat, both in folder and fixed blade form. I'll start with the folder. Now these versions of the Heat F, it's the Heat F 3D actually, because you have a bit of a contoured handle scale with some extra machining going on. They come in at about 280, and DPX kind of splits production between Lion Steel in Italy and for some models, and with Rowan Manufacturing in the US, who makes the SE blades. And these folders are made by Lion Steel. You got 2 versions. You got the blue anodized titanium as well as a standard gray titanium. And like I said, a little bit of curvature to them, and the kind of diamond textured pattern has the points all rounded off, so it's nice and comfortable feeling in the hand while giving you the extra kind of surface area for a little bit more grip. Blade steel, M390 in this case, about 2¼ inches long. And it's, as always, a nice stout blade. This is sort of if you need a heavier use knife, or you feel more comfortable with a heavier use knife, but you can't really carry a larger knife, even if 3 inches is still too much, this is definitely something worth taking a look at. Plus, despite that small blade size, still got a nice meaty grip. I can just barely get all 4 of my hands on that handle, and even if I were kind of trailing off the back end of it a little bit, it still has a very secure grip, because you have such a wide shape to the handle from the front view. I'll fold it up. You've got frame lock there, nice steel insert there. No over travel arrestor or roto block that some of the Lion Steel made models do have, but you don't have to worry about that so much from a locking perspective, and on something like this it's probably not as necessary anyway. Now this is a thumb stud only deployment. There is no flipper in this case, but you, actually it's not thumb stud only deployment. You also have a pocket deployer on this. As opposed to a hook jutting out of the top, it's actually a cutout removed from the spine, and you can use that not only for pocket deployment, which I simulated there with my fingertip, don't you know, but you can also use it as a bottle opener, which technically makes this knife a multi-tool, especially when you consider you've also got a glass breaker there on the end in conjunction with the deep carry pocket clip. Now, one thing to note about that deep carry clip is while most of them are reversible on some of the other designs, it looks like they didn't mill out the front scale the same way they did the back. So you probably could still screw this in so that it looped over this front side, but it might not sit quite as securely as it does in the standard right-hand configuration. Now, in addition to that, we've got new versions of the Heat Hiker made by Rowan here in the States, coming in at 75 bucks right now. Actually, there have been versions of this knife made by White River Knife and Tool in the past as well. Another great American company, but those were a little bit more expensive. And right here, you've got just that Rowan, or Essie if you want to say, but you've got that Rowan quality. Blade steel is $10.95. It is coated black in this case, but you've got a tan and a lighter green, like the Ranger green, I think that they typically use, and that signature carabiner there at the end. Of course, you wouldn't want to loop that onto anything without the sheath, so they're going to give you a nice sheath to go along with it. But the carry options here are quite a few. You could loop it to a backpack if you want. I would personally actually clip it to your belt, and you've got plenty of options here. You could thread paracord through here to make your own belt loops, or of course a large or small tech lock would also fit that. You've also got a Velcro strap here on the end with a bit of a loop at the end of it. So that gives you some more options for places you could attach this to as well. Of course, you could take that off as well and wear it as a neck knife if you wish. It's certainly within that type of size, because again, roughly a 2.4 inch blade is what we're calling it here. But as you can see, it's essentially got the exact same profile as that folder. The cutout in the spine in this case, you're not opening the blade, but you can still do your bottle opening stuff right there. But just a nice small pattern for those smaller camp tasks, especially if you don't want to carry a ton of weight, but you still want a nice robust blade as you're going about your business. All right, let's close out with a couple more tactical things. New Krudo to show you, and this one is the MOZAIK LTE, coming in about $112. You've got sort of a Tonto dagger kind of mashup of a shape going on here. Essentially 4 different primary grind angles. You can see them out here near the tip. It's a double-edged look, but this is a single-edged blade. The spine here is nice and easy to put your thumb on if you want, because they've actually rounded it over a little bit. So it's not going to be too uncomfortable there. Obviously, it does concentrate the force of a push a little bit more into your skin, but it's not as bad as it could be for sure. But essentially, because it's double-edged, you've got a real nice profile, essentially that diamond shape for moving through materials, because you don't have as much drag from the spine on the cut either. As far as the materials, it's a 9CR stainless, so again, 440C or equivalent levels of performance, about 3.6 inches of steel in this case. Now the handles here are stainless steel, a bit on the chunkier side, but they give you a very secure grip, that's for sure. And on a knife like this, that's going to be used potentially tactically, it's got a nice solid platform. Grip is provided by G10 inlays on both sides. And you can see there, nice milled pocket clip, which is reversible for either side. Frame lock feels secure, and when I close it up, nice profile there too. Again, flipper as well as a pocket deployment option. Bit of a theme today. And this one works really well. I tried this out earlier. Ball bearings in the pivot, and when the hem of your pocket grabs that, man, it just snaps open. It feels quite nice actually. With that in mind, if you've been looking to get into a kind of a tactical inspired knife with a, don't call it a Emerson Wave opener, this would actually be a pretty good recommendation from me to check that style out. Because the action, like I said, it's really nice. You're gonna get a really nice feel for what that style of knife can do. And a knife that may not be as streamlined as some, but it's a nice, very solidly built piece that is not gonna let you down, I don't think. But if you like a profile like this, but you want a double edge and you want something even bigger, I got something here for you, and it's not even gonna cost you too much more. There you go. It's not folding, but oh well. This is the APOC Survival Tools Atrim Tack Brutus, which is essentially an 18-inch kind of modern Gladius in a way, coming in at just $130. Now for what you're getting, it doesn't cost all that much. This is essentially 2 pounds of steel right here. 9260, which is a very common sword making steel because it is very tough. Holds an edge pretty well, decently at least. But again, for something like this that's gonna be really swung and abused and potentially thrashed, the toughness is gonna be very important. Double-edged profile, as you can see. In terms of the edge quality itself, it's decent. It could use a little bit of cleaning up. You kind of feel the burr a little bit in a few places. For the price, it doesn't bother me too much, again, considering what you're getting there. But do definitely keep that in mind. You might want to touch those edges up once you get it if you want to use it. But it definitely feels solid. You've got G10 there in the handles. This section right here, you may think if this were a survival knife, you'd say that was a bow drill divot, but that's actually a divot that interfaces with the sheath itself, as you can see here, which is a pretty cool design actually. You've essentially got what looks like a Kydex upper with a more rigid, non-positive retention type of scabbard here at the bottom. It's got a bit of an orange peel texture to it. Feels rock solid for sure. As far as carry, you could certainly do a baldric by hooking into these. I would say you could use a tech lock. It would certainly fit, but probably gonna really weigh your pants down if you do, because this is a essentially 2-pound sword. No, it's a machete, so it's nature's first multi-tool. But do I really need to say more? You guys know what's up. It's one of those another one of those smile inducers that you can get a lot of fun out of for just about 130 bucks. And that's it. That is the last new knives for 2020. I don't know about you, but I am ready for 2021, and things are hopefully gonna start turning around for some folks out there. But anyway, let me know what you thought of the knives on the table this week, and let me know what you're looking forward to in 2021. Now, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, of course, links will be in the description as always. And while you're over there at the Knife Center's website, make sure you sign up for our Knife Rewards program, because if you're going to spend your money on one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center signing off. Happy New Year.